Hello, and welcome to Have Your Say. I'm Ann Minicozzi, president of the Community Breakfast Collaborative, here with my co-host, and I guess we're both going to be interviewees today, Diana Robertson, who is the president of the NAACP Mainline Branch. And today our topic is essentially a year in review of the Have Your Say program. We've been recording this program for over a year. We started in October of 2018. And so we're going to look back at the programs that we recorded and talk about that in a little bit of detail. Before we start, we're Mainline TV, Mainline Network, formerly Radnor Studio 21, and we just want to give a shout out to Vince Celli, who is the general manager of the TV station for Radnor and Lower Merion and Narberth, and also a shout out to Kevin, who is recording and producing the program. They don't want to come on camera, so we're just saying a big thank you to them.
Thank you.
To appreciate all the help that they give to get us scheduled, record, get these microphones working properly, and just get us really prepared also to record the show. We're volunteers from the community, and anyone can come in and record a television show, but it really helps to have that coaching and support, I think, as we're doing this. So thanks to Vince and Kevin. I really appreciate it.
It's been a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been a great opportunity.
So thinking back, I wrote up a few questions that I wanted to bring up, but I'm sure we're going to go back and forth with each other too. So I remember in 2018, we both came in and we were recording about the Community Breakfast Undoing Racism Day for 2018, the event that we had at Villanova, and that was our ninth event, or our eighth event at that time, the eighth event. And when we finished recording, we talked about, why don't we have a show? Why don't we record a show together on a regular basis? And I had no idea what we would call the show, and then you came up with the idea for Have Your Say. So do you remember why you came up with that title? And
I had to think back, but I remember one of the things that I thought was going to be a great opportunity is being able to have a voice on different topics. And so, you know, somehow as I thought about that, I'm thinking about different things, and when I said Have Your Say, and I think I actually did run it by a couple of people and said, what do you think about that? And they all said, yeah, that's pretty good, and it would get the attention of people. So so as part of that, it was always the having a voice, that this was going to be a great opportunity to do that and express opinions and facts and information on various topics.
So having guests on the show who we could hear from, who maybe we don't ordinarily hear from, and give them an extra voice, extra attention, but then also focusing on sharing certain information that either people don't have time to read and learn about, or that it just isn't in other sources, so that we're able to present it.
It's just not on our radar, and so just being able to provide a different exposure to certain topics or a different perspective that maybe folks might not have thought about. And like you said, most people are so busy, and they don't always have the opportunity to really look up information. And so either having heard something maybe on the news and we're saying like, let's get more information on that topic, or things just in general that we know people, if they had the opportunity to research or access resources, that they would get information on, and that we thought it might be important enough that they have that information. So,
And I would say having a program like ours, which other people do, although I do think we provide some unique perspectives and information, it's really as grassroots as you can get, having public access television. So I think, really, as you were saying already, it really does provide such a great opportunity.
It does.
And it's almost like hearing from your neighbors who have had a chance to dig in a little bit more. Well, and your expertise and then your connections with the NAACP and all the networking that you do, you really hear a lot and learn a lot. So it's really great that you're able to share that too.
Right. And I think what's been great, even between the two of us, sometimes having different perspectives on different topics. And I think it's good, people sometimes don't always value that or think it's, well, this is my opinion and that's it. But I think it's always good, even when you have an opinion, to hear a different perspective or to hear what someone else thinks, because it is the only way, I believe, that we can come to some consensus as to what things should or can be by having those different perspectives. And sometimes by doing that, you might change your mind a little bit, or at least understand why people feel the way they do.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I do too. So one question that I thought would be interesting, and I wanted to know what your opinion was, what's the most representative show of Have Your Say? If you could just choose one, but you can choose a few if you want to.
There's several, but one show in particular that I thought was very good, as far as providing in-depth information on a topic that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of, and that was when we did the two-show segment with Anita Friday on Juneteenth. And I thought that was we could have continued with the series, but we took that opportunity to do a two-segment show on that, and I thought the information was really great, and it is something too that you can play or listen to over and over again as well. And so I thought that was certainly one of them. And because of we talked about a little bit what some of the topics we had, and we know we had, the folks dealing from the political aspect on voting and all of those, that sort of thing, and even to the candidates and party line kind of information. Relating to the show and the community breakfast and having those 5 programs on gun violence awareness and all of that. So that was, these are things we would not have been able to do in the same way had we not been able to broadcast, to get, people, once again, the whole educational piece on public health.
Yes.
And with Candace, Dr. Candace Robertson James on public health issues, the whole food insecurity piece that we did, and just a whole array of topics that I'm sure when we consider next year some of the things that we could continue on and maybe bring even a different approach as to how can we improve some of these things? Because one aspect of being aware of something is bringing to the attention of folks. Once you bring it to the attention, it's kind of like, now what are we going to do about it? And what are some of the options as to how we deal with improving a situation that might not be in where it should be at that particular time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm wondering also, since the Juneteenth 2 programs back to back, I think that was really successful.
Right.
And then having 5 programs on representatives from different ending gun violence organizations, and they didn't run all back to back, but almost.
Right. They were pretty close, yeah.
Maybe that's something that we should do in the future,
right,
so then we can
topics.
Deepen and either talking to a variety of people or the same person a few times, just to get deeper and just get more information on a particular topic. I did have a note that the most views for any of the programs that we recorded, and my count is that we recorded 34 programs.
Yes.
So it wasn't 52 programs. We were trying to have a weekly show, but I know it gets get busy with other things.
Right.
And,
but we did pretty good for the first
34,
year.
I think that is pretty good.
Right.
But the most views was the program that we recorded with Brendan Jeremy Jobs, who is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at the Haverford School. And we really were able to dig in, at least in that one program. That might be a topic we want to dig into more in the coming year, is the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how they're implementing that at the Haverford School.
Right.
And how other schools and universities are implementing that and how people are implementing those ideas and changing systems,
Right.
even in the workplace.
that could be
something
another
that we look
topic,
into
yeah.
more. But I know part of the having more views is the ability to distribute the program, which is recorded on YouTube, to a
Right.
whole network. And I know that Brendan and the Haverford School have an extensive network, and they were able to
Right.
share the interview that we had with him
Right.
to many people.
Yes.
So that's something that
Right.
is good to keep in mind.
Right.
Yeah,
And
it's
to-
a
and
good
to-
topic, but also, being able to distribute
Right.
that link so a lot of people could see it and
Right,
learn from
to get it out and continue
Yeah.
to do that. And I think that's the thing we have to encourage people to do, because I know even when
Yeah.
for one of when Candace's programs that through LaSalle,
Yes.
when she did make them aware, they did have a broader viewing audience of that. So it's just encouraging folks to understand that this is something that when we're touching on or talking about different topics, that the whole purpose is to get that information out. So
Yeah.
either people are sharing it or within their own networks, making sure that that's out there so people get to see it. And it's like I said, it's something you can watch, over and over again as well to get some perspectives.
I think that's another really good point. By recording the program, whoever is recording, I'm thinking of Allegra Cressman, the executive director of the Interfaith Hospitality Network of
Right.
the Main Line. Once she came in and recorded essentially the story of the organization,
Right.
now you have that recorded and you can just share that, because now
Yes.
and I think that is something that we try to do here with
Right.
Have Your Say, is enable someone who comes in to be able to tell their story.
Right.
And then it's right
Share
there.
that
You can
story.
share that so easily,
Yeah.
so then you don't have to keep repeating it.
Right,
If
absolutely.
if you say it well and as completely as you can in the amount of time that we have, and we always say
I know.
we're running out of time and we have to end
Right.
the program. But
But
yeah,
it
it's
does.
handy for organizations.
It's a good PR piece for their
Yeah.
organizations and individuals as to what they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I know you gave a nice overview already, but just to name some of the organizations who we did record programs with, it was the Radnor League of Women Voters, that was Roberta Winters.
right.
Actually, we recorded one where you were featured talking about the NAACP a couple
Right.
times, I guess, because you went to that national conference, which
national
was really
convention, yes.
interesting to
Yes.
have that insight into
Right.
what issues came to the top and how you would prioritize that as a national organization.
Right,
I
right.
thought that was really interesting too. Anthony Stevenson was on, the principal
Yes.
of the Radnor Elementary
Right,
School, and also Lower Merion Township Commissioner.
Right.
Ward 4, and that was on the logistics of voting.
Right.
So we had a number of shows
On
when we
voting,
first started
right.
on voting
Yes.
and
Voter
getting out the vote.
registration and getting out the vote.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and then the ones for ending gun violence, that was Brian Miller from Heeding God's Call to End Gun Violence with Father Joe Janito, the pastor at St. Thomas of Villanova Parish. Sarah Wallace is the Philadelphia legislative lead for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, which is Bloomberg's organization. That's a new piece now that we didn't
Right.
know that he was going to run for president
Right,
at the
right.
time that we recorded that.
Yeah.
Gail Morrison from Radnor Residents for Gun Safety, and Shira Goodman, the executive director of Ceasefire Pennsylvania. So those were the Ending Gun Violence organizations.
Right.
And then Candace Robertson James from Public Health at LaSalle University, Allegra Cressman from Interfaith Hospitality Network of the Main Line, and Elizabeth Bertollet, the program manager there. Brandon Trombetta, the executive director of ElderNet.
Right.
We
He was
had
here, yes.
him on to describe that organization.
Yes.
And I guess most recently, I've been hearing more about the food pantry piece that they do at ElderNet
Okay.
in Bryn Mawr.
Okay.
And then we had Reverend Carolyn Cavanis, pastor at Bethel AME Church in Ardmore, and Reverend Virginia Pollard
Right.
from Zion Baptist. That was about the food security
Right.
for public school students during the summer when you can't get the breakfast and lunch meals
Right.
because school's out. So the box
Yeah.
lunch and a book program, and the program they were doing in Lower Merion Township in the interfaith
Right.
organization as well. Another
Pastor
one that
Pollard.
was,
Pastor Pollard.
and
we had,
yes,
yeah.
yes, Pastor James
Right,
Pollard.
Right.
Yeah, that was
From
really,
Zion, and I think right before that was the in reference to the MLK Day, and then we had talk about the MLK organization association, and what the and then Pastor Powell came on to talk about their what they've been doing for, I think he said 30 years now, with the their relationship with the synagogue.
yep, with
and their
Mainline
program.
Reformed Temple.
Yes, so
Yeah, that is a fascinating
Yeah.
interfaith, long-time
Right.
relationship.
yes,
That's nice to be able to hear more about that.
right.
Yeah.
So so there've been some good programs, and hopefully, like you say, as we consider 2020, that not only we'll think about topics, but hopefully people will maybe write in and make suggestions of things that they would like to hear about as well, for us to consider as topics. And so
Yeah, we do have our have, why, say at gmail.com
yes.
that people could send in suggestions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so we want our viewers to do that, to make sure that whatever we haven't done, if there's something that they would like to hear, and then we'll see if we can facilitate that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Another one that was really popular was the Radnor Township Civic Association interview that we had with Chuck Marshall and
Yes.
Luella Lucci.
Yes.
That was really an interesting interview, and also that had a lot of views
right.
as well.
Right.
Yeah.
That did. Yes. So.
Yeah. And then we had John Fennell from Senator, State
Dalen
Senator
Leach,
Dalen Leach's office.
Yes. Yes.
And then most recently we had George Beatty from the Radnor Democratic
Right.
Committee,
Right.
which was very interesting. It's one, and tell me what you think about this. It's one experience when we're recording here and things sound a certain way, generally over the programs that we record. But then when you view it later on,
Yeah.
how certain things come across, some things are, it's really nice to have a guest on the program and say, that person really stated that really well or explained something really well.
Right.
And I can see that maybe later on after I review the program, but in the
Right.
moment, maybe not
Yeah.
notice that as much. So,
Right. Right.
yeah, we've had some impressive guests, I
Yeah.
think.
I think so, and I think I don't know about you. I wasn't sure, even though I know what I thought we could do, but the expectations, I think what took place exceeded the expectation, because I didn't really know what the impact could be. And even though we didn't always get people to write in, there were people who would tell me,
Yes.
and the reach was farther than I even thought, because there would be people who I would just run into, sometimes people I didn't even know, and they would say, like, I heard your program, and I would ask them, like, oh, really? And so, and they commented on that they liked it, and they thought the topics were good, and that they regularly watched it. So, so to hear that was
that's a bonus too.
yes. I thought that was interesting.
And don't you think some of the guests that we've had on the show, which we didn't mention all of them, but a couple of them were interested in starting programs of their own.
Yes.
And then other people who were not guests on our show saw the program and said they have something that they think would be valuable for sharing with the community.
Right.
And then they started programs too.
Right.
So
and
that's
I think
really
that was
nice.
positive that people had that incentive once they saw, oh, this could happen. I could actually give information to people, and in our day of the different forms of media that we have, certainly public cable is I think needs to be utilized even more.
I agree.
Than it has in the past, and to know that we're a part of that. That kind of helped me to know how important that this could really be as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what do you think in terms of looking forward to 2020, issues that you think we really will need to focus on?
I mean, clearly 2020 is a big year in a lot of different ways. And so we know we have the census. So clearly I think we need to have some conversations on that and what that really means. I'm not sure everybody really understands the impact of being counted in the census, you know. So I think some programs on that would be great. Clearly, the election is in the big election year. And so, once again, I think providing information on topics that candidates need to be considering. So I think it's not always, you know, folks when they're considering who they may want to vote for, then consider the things that impact you in those topic areas, and then look to see how those candidates, what their perspective is on those topics. So I think maybe providing some information in regard to that would be helpful as well in that decision-making process.
We're talking about at the Community Breakfast Collaborative, our nonprofit that we're a part of with a bunch of other people, that our theme for 2020 will be pretty eclectic. I guess our title is Where Do We Go From Here? But then we're talking about it being interactive, where we would have simulations at different tables on different really social justice issues, racism, poverty, education, crime, and then attendees would be at their tables having their breakfast and everything also. But then when it gets to the program part, we would have these simulations on different topics. And I guess since last year, having the number of programs focused on ending gun violence, I would foresee that we would do a similar thing where we could have guests on Have Your Say to provide background information about the issue of poverty, the issue of education inequity, and needing to have equity in education, that kind of thing, food security and things like that. So then we can educate as we're building up to or leading up to the breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good because I think the thing of it is that understanding some of these various topics that you just mentioned, how that also plugs into the issue of racism. I think that's where there's the disconnect, but to understand when we're talking about the overall, these are the different ways that things plug in to that and understanding how that happens. And so clearly with education, like I said, the criminal justice system,
and housing,
housing, yes, all these different things. So it would be good to be able to have have guests come in who can talk about those different areas and understanding how these different areas really plug into that, to the issue of racism.
And I really see it from the perspective of systemic racism, that structure as an overall. Do you see that? That's the overall, that's the overarching concept, the systemic racism, and then all of these issues plug in.
And that's the part people don't understand. When you say, you know, the systemic, the institutionalized racism, people don't understand. But that's where the history comes into play to understand that, and that although there have been laws and there have been other things to improve upon that, sometimes people do things without even realizing that they're doing, because that's the systemic part of it, is that your behaviors, there's certain behaviors that actually lend to the racism piece without folks even understanding that it does. And so hopefully, yes, we could have programs that talk about how that happens, you know, and the things that are in place that they don't understand because of the historical pieces. You know, people say, oh, well, I just do, here are the policies, this is what I follow. That's nice, but if those policies have been embedded in a system for so long, then you don't even realize what you do is adding to that. It perpetuates that whole racism piece. And so I think it would be great.
As a white person, I'm benefiting from these things, not realizing it, and a person of color doesn't have those privileges, so
Right.
they're not getting that. And then
Right.
what happens over time,
Right.
where you just, you can't make progress.
Right. And the attitudes and just, your thought process, So if you think in a way of classism, so to speak, that, there are certain people who should benefit and others that shouldn't, that in and of itself is a problem,
Yeah.
So there should be some interesting conversations for next year.
I think we'll have some interesting programs next year.
Yes.
And then going back to really the first thing that you said was the census. It's interesting. Everyone needs to take the census, and obviously we'll dig into this much more through next year.
Right.
But also, it's so interesting when the census is completed and you start to get those reports in the newspaper, on the radio, or through television of once some of the data has been analyzed, what it indicates.
Right.
And then the impact of that.
Right.
So if we're able to look at that in advance,
Yes.
while people are saying, and we won't even have paper censuses this time, it'll be electronic.
Right.
Which that's probably a problem for a lot of people as well. If you don't have easy internet access, and now it's not something that showed up in your mailbox.
Right.
Right, and you set it aside and say, oh, I have to fill that out.
Yeah.
And, and then you don't, and then someone comes and has to knock on your door.
Right.
Which I did that for a few different of the censuses.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then we that's what I'm saying, we have to understand, because that in itself can be a process that lends itself to certain folks not being counted, and we want to make sure everybody is.
Yep.
So whatever that means, and we just have to keep on it, and here's where you can go, or here's what you can do, or for folks like NAACP, we can set up, maybe times and places where we go and have our laptops and have whatever, so people can then come and do it that way, so we can assist people who may not readily either have access to a computer or even know, older folks might not even know what to do even if they had the access. And so assisting in that process, finding a way to assist in that process,
The paper format already was overwhelming for people, especially if you were one of the people who had the longer form, so you had to provide a lot more detail.
Right.
And those are just assigned randomly.
Right.
And then imagine having to do that long form online, and then you're not comfortable with working online either.
Right. So we're going to have to
there's
find
gonna-
ways to assist people. And I know that there are jobs as part of the Census Bureau to help in that process as well. So for those people who may be looking for temporary jobs, then they actually do have jobs for folks to actually help as part of that process.
Yep,
So,
and they pay well.
Yes.
And they swear you in, you're a
Yes.
federal employee. And it's a great opportunity to serve,
Right.
as well as pick up some extra money.
Yes.
It is impressive to be a federal employee for that short amount of time, as long as it takes
Yes.
to get all of the non-responses
Right.
completed in your particular area that you're assigned to work.
So maybe that's one of the things we can do when we have somebody to come in to talk about that.
Yep.
Making sure that the folks have access to that information and we'll be able to access it. So,
Yeah.
so almost
we
at the
are.
end of 2019, having had our show, and I just want to say that I think it's been great. I think we work together well.
It's been a pleasure for me too.
And so, as everybody considers going into the holidays, wishing everybody happy holidays, but understanding that, for everybody it may not be so happy, but, for folks to look at what they can do in the way of being kind, extra kind, and sharing their hospitality to their neighbor and friends or other people who may have a need, and that we look forward, Ann and I look forward to our programming in 2020. Anybody who has a program that you would like to see or information you'd like to see, basically that you would like to see promoted, please send us that information. and that we will be sure to try to have that guest available. So everybody have happy holidays, and think about how you can in 2020 have your say. Thank you.